What happened to Georgia? Where does Notre Dame go from here?
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Friday edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. The national quarterfinals are in the books. We know the matchups for the national semifinals, and there's a lot to get to in today's show. Of course, we will talk about NIL. It seems to never go away, and a playoff team, the OC of a playoff team, has some thoughts, some very interesting thoughts. We'll get to that. We'll talk about Notre Dame's performance last night in the Sugar Bowl and also what went wrong for the Georgia Bulldogs. Today's show brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's right. You get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. First of all, do not blame that young Georgia walk-on. If you're going to sit here and put all of the focus, all of the blame on one play, then you have a massive, massive problem. Parker Jones had nothing to do with this. You still might have kicked the field goal had that sideline infraction not happened. So let's get that out of the way. And it was shameful what ESPN did in the final moments of that game, putting him back on the broadcast. Absolutely shameful. And I know a lot of people at ESPN, and I hesitate to criticize that network because I don't like to criticize TV networks. I don't like to criticize people in this business who work their tails off. But I don't know who was in the truck. But that's shameful. Now, we can talk about Georgia and why they lost this game and go in depth and all this other stuff. There were 3 plays that lost this game. 3. That's it. 3. It was the fumble on the 13-yard line that led to the touchdown that made it 13-3. There was the sack fumble at the end of the first half. And then in the second half, it was the kickoff return. That's it. Those are the 3 plays. And they all happened within a span of what? 2.5 game minutes. So let's get to the fumble first. The idea... Georgia has had lots of issues, but fumbling hasn't necessarily been one of them. That's just a good play by a Notre Dame player. Period. End of story. So if you're going to harp on that, look, I understand that there have been issues that have plagued this team throughout the course of the season. But do not focus on anything other than Notre Dame's defense being ridiculously good. That's it. Now, the one that stood out to me, and I was watching this with a friend of mine, a big Georgia fan, and I said, with, 58 seconds left when Georgia got the ball back, just get out of there, go to halftime. I know Georgia doesn't get the ball coming out of the half, but let's regroup. And there's no way, there's no rationale that Kirby can explain away why he went for it there. Why he decided, hey, you know what? We're going to try to roll down the field with a backup quarterback and at least get 3 out of this. There's no rationale for that. And to his credit, he admitted that on the way to the locker room at halftime. But the mindset just bothered me. Now, Gunnar Stockton came out playing well. Right? I think he was 6 of 6 or 6 of 7 to start. But in the end of that second half or second quarter, really throughout the entire second quarter, I kind of got the sense that he was losing confidence. They were giving him too much of the playbook. There was a lot going on that I think showed me that A, he wasn't necessarily ready for this big spot, but B, they didn't realize that he wasn't ready for this big spot. And Notre Dame did a lot to confuse him, to get into his face. And that was it. That was not Gunnar's fault. To me, that's the coaching staff's fault. And then there was the kickoff return. At that point, the game was over. I know Georgia sort of had a chance late, but that game was over. Now, what isn't surprising and what has plagued Georgia all year, so it cost them losses. Certainly would cost them the Ole Miss game. Almost cost them in a ton of other games. They can't run the football. They haven't been able to run the football all year. And you look at what happened in this game. Trevor Etienne, I'm sorry. Look, I've said it since the beginning of the season. Trevor Etienne is not that dude. He's a supplementary back. He's a 1B. He's not a 1A. And when Georgia's at its best, they have Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, Keith Marshall and Caleb King. Or was that Todd Gurley? Whatever, doesn't matter. They've had a 1-2 punch. Etienne was the 2. He should have been the 2. He should never have been counted on as the 1. And it reared its ugly head. 11 carries, 38 yards, a long of 8. A long of 8 yards. If you're going to give him 11 carries, out of 29, 10 of those being Gunnar Stockton. So in terms of take the quarterback runs out of this, 11 of 19 carries went to Trevor Etienne. It's like Mike Bobo just kept pounding the rock with the wrong guy. And what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's not actually the definition of insanity, but that's how the idiom goes. But whatever. It's what cost him all year. It's what made this Georgia team fallible. It's what made this Georgia team much different than the ones of the 3 last year, of the last 3 years. Even last year when they didn't win the national championship, they could still run the rock. So Mike Bobo is to blame for this. I know it was Kirby's call to try to score at the end of the half. Notre Dame was getting pressure off the edge all game long. You don't put your quarterback in that situation. So it was Kirby's fault, but also play calling was not. You should have had somebody, Oscar Delp or whoever, helping out on that left side. And why didn't you go to Nate Frazier? 4 carries. Nate Frazier got 4 carries in this game, and he averaged 9.3 yards. What are you doing here? What's going on? Why? Think about this. Look, I've said this for the entire season. If you're going to criticize Mike Bobo, fine, do it. The saying, run the dang ball, Bobo, has been in the Georgia lexicon for 15 years, whenever he got the offensive coordinator job under Mark Richt. And it's what came out to bite him again. You have a backup quarterback in the biggest game of the season, in a game that's within punching distance for essentially the whole thing. You let him throw 32 times. When you have a guy like Nate Frazier, who has proven consistently all year long that he should be the 1A, it's like Mike Bobo did what hurt him all season. He tried to make his quarterback throw himself out of a slump. In the past, it was Carson Beck. And Carson Beck was a liability for most of the season. We had talked about that on this show consistently. Okay, it's one thing to do that with your preseason Heisman hopeful. It's a completely different thing to do it with a backup quarterback making his first start in a national quarterfinal. So Mike Bobo deserves a ton of criticism, but really it's 3 plays that lost them the game. 3 plays that lost them the game. We'll take a break. We'll talk about Notre Dame, the best boring team in college football. They got the job done. It wasn't that Georgia lost the game. Notre Dame did everything they could and everything they should to win that game. We'll talk about the Irish next year on College Football Smothered and Covered. Today's show brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action. 1 week left of that with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Think about that. You place a $5 bet on a game this weekend. You win it. You got some funds to have fun in the NFL playoffs. There's so many ways for you to pick up a dub. I like betting on players, betting on games in the middle of a game. And the best thing about FanDuel is that if you want to have live betting, you can do it with player stats live, play-by-play, all that stuff right there on the same page in which you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today, FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Notre Dame is limited offensively. And I say that because they don't do anything great. They do everything good. They don't make mistakes. They have guys like Faison get open and Greathouse get open when they're needed. They have Jeremiah Love get tough yards at the right time. And they have depth when some of their stars get hurt, like Price coming in and getting 37 very important yards, especially after Love got hurt. In the first half of that game for Notre Dame, it was essentially Riley Leonard up the middle. Riley Leonard on design runs outside. And it worked. Why get creative in the first part of that game if you're controlling it? So you're going to sit here and look at the total yards and say, hey, 244 yards, that's unacceptable. 4 yards per play, that's unacceptable. This team can't cut it. No, this team understands what it is and what it shouldn't be within the confines of that 60 minutes between those white lines. That is a huge compliment to Marcus Freeman. That is a huge compliment to Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard only had 90 passing yards. 90 passing yards. 6 yards per completion. And they dominated. They owned control of that game. It's not because Riley Leonard can't do it. Riley Leonard can go win a game. He does have that in his repertoire. But Marcus Freeman, Mike Denbrock, and Riley Leonard understand there's no reason to take risks with the defense that they have. Self-awareness goes a long way in this sport. Notre Dame had it last night. Notre Dame has had it all year. Georgia did not have it on one play. And that was after the touchdown when Kirby Smart tried to go down the field with Gunnar Stockton instead of just running the clock out. One play. Notre Dame has self-awareness. They've had it all season long. And that's what won them this game. 9 tackles for loss. There it is. 9 tackles for loss. That's proof positive that they understand who they are. If you're going to get in the backfield, if you're going to put Georgia behind the sticks, why would you risk putting yourself behind the sticks on offense? No reason. Now, I know what Georgia fans will say, and that's, well, yeah, Notre Dame knows what they are, but then why did they have to do that trick play on that punt in the fourth quarter? And more specifically, why wasn't there a false start called on that wide receiver? There should have been a false start called on that wide receiver. But they had that play planned. They knew what they were going to do. And that shows Marcus Freeman's fully aware of what his team's capable of and how they can execute. Now, what Georgia should have done is played the Brett Bielema card. All their players went flying off the field. Georgia had that play covered. They knew what was going to happen. That was not a surprise for Georgia. You could tell because that defense came flying out, but that's the problem. They should have gone Brett Bielema. They should have just slow played the entire thing and put pressure on Notre Dame to commit a false start, which they did, but even more of an obvious one, or call a timeout. That's the part of that game that Georgia was not prepared for. It's not that they were not prepared for that fake punt. It was that they were not prepared for the chaos that ensued. And that's credit to Marcus Freeman and that Notre Dame team for knowing exactly what they are, knowing exactly where they're going. So it was very impressive. Marcus, that team's legit, man. That team is legit. That's why going into this Penn State game, right? Does Penn State wow you? Not really. Does Notre Dame control the tempo, the identity of each game? Yes. Is that the way Penn State wants to play? Yeah, it is. Penn State kind of wants to play that game as well. Notre Dame does it better. I haven't seen the line, nor do I care, because we have what? 6 days until that game goes down. We'll see if Jeremiah Love, how healthy he is, or whatever happens in terms of injuries from here on out. I'm not going to make a pick on that game, at least in terms of the spread. But I'm telling you right now, if Notre Dame's not the favorite, load up on Notre Dame. They are a better version of Penn State, and they have a coach who's not going to lose his mind. I think James Franklin, even though James Franklin won a big game last week, won a big game against SMU, I still don't trust him. Certainly not more than Marcus Freeman. We'll take a break. When we come back, more NIL stuff. And there's a coach for a team that made the college football playoff who is not happy with where his team is going moving forward. Talk about it next. It's College Football Smothered and Covered, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or were paying for twice? It definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for. One specific television streaming subscription. I'm not going to say which one, but I didn't really use it ever. So Rocket Money helped me track it down and cancel it. That's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscription, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions today and reach your financial goals faster. With Rocket Money, go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. All right, check this out. This is from Boise State offensive coordinator Dirk Koetter. He had this quote. He put it on Facebook. And it tells you just how different things are from the haves and the have-nots. Of course, Dirk Koetter worked with Ashton Jeanty this year, which made his job a lot easier. But he said this: awesome facilities for sure, but we are behind right now in the NIL game. Our best players are getting offered between 2 and 10 times what we can offer. We are losing recruits to the portal to schools that are just flat out outbidding us. I know it's not all about the money, but Spencer Danielson and the staff will undoubtedly continue to fight to find the right guys, but money is an issue. I know ticket and travel costs continue to rise, but I hope you'll join me in contributing to the Horseshoe Collective so that Coach D and I can keep the best players in Boise and continue to find the next Ashton Jeanty or Ahmad Hassanin. I'm mailing my check tomorrow, and every little bit helps. Thank you for making this a fun season. Go Broncos. What is he saying? I think he's saying that he understands what last year's team or this year's team was and what the problem is next year. Boise State got to the playoff, I think, due in large part to what happened last offseason. Ashton Jeanty staying, convincing him being the linchpin, the catalyst for convincing a lot of other people to stay. It's like what we talk about with Florida State 2 years. Unfinished business, hashtag unfinished business. Same thing with Georgia after the 2020 season. They went on to win the national championship. You had guys come back who could have made millions of dollars in the NFL. Jordan Davis was one that jumps out more than anybody else. Boise State had that. But they're in a position now where, okay, they've been there, done that. They made the playoff, which is huge for anybody. They're not going to win the national championship. They know that. So the goal has been accomplished. They understand that. I think Dirk Koetter understands that they got the job done. They reached their ceiling. And so everybody's at risk. Now every coach in America looks at that team and says, wow, look at those guys. Look at what Dirk Koetter did. Look at how they developed that team. Those guys are legit. Let's go get them. The problem is they can't raise the money. Boise State has no chance to raise the money in the Mountain West. They don't really have it moving forward in the Pac-12 either. But I think what Dirk Koetter's afraid of is a Florida State situation where you win at a high level, you go undefeated in the regular season. You should have made the playoff if you're Florida State. We don't need to go over that ad nauseum. But then everybody bails. There's no reason to stick around anymore. You did all you could. Boise State did all it could. And now Dirk Koetter, and I'm assuming Spencer Danielson, understand that, hey, man, this team is going to look way different moving forward. Now, going to the Pac-12, you might not matter all that much, but in terms of winning at an elite level, that's not going to happen. But that will do it for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Hey, join the subtext group. You can find the link in the description below. Don't forget to share this show, write a review, hit that notification bell no matter how you consume this show. Spread the word by doing those things. It helps those algorithms put the show in spots where it gets more views and more listens. We'll talk to you Monday. Not a lot going on in terms of bowls this weekend, but please, let's go Falcons. And before we head out, prayers to everybody in New Orleans who are victims of the terrorist attack, families of the victims, friends of the victims. Just an awful situation. It's time to come together as a country. It's time to prevent these things from happening. If you see something, say something. I think we need to get back to that mindset because every little thing helps. It's better to say something than not say something. See you on Monday.